Welcome to Deges and Dragons. I thought this was going to be hard, but...
Welcome to Deges and Dragons.
Who wants some of the Ripper?
Take chance, baby. Woo!
Smoke arrows!
He's clearly Captain Crunch. I'm a man of the people.
Shattered world.
Ripper always knows! Degecast.
And welcome to the Degecast, the supplemental podcast for our YouTube show, Deges and Dragons. I'm your host, Nate Lindberg. You can find me all over social media at Nate Lindberg, and you can follow our brand on Twitter, Facebook, and most importantly, YouTube at Degetime. That's Degetime. Do you want to be a part of this very show? You can be. Email us at degetime@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail in the official Degecast mailbox at 617-506-9686. We'll answer any questions, respond to your comments on the next episode. Speaking of the next episode, I'm going to have two of these guys on the next episode with me. First one would be Tony. He's the only player to be on every player panel so far of Season 1 of Deges and Dragons. Tony, how you doing today, dude?
Doing all right. You, man?
Doing good. We actually filmed the last episode of the season today, which was a game called Tiny Frontiers. So we all, Conrad, Tony, and I played that all day long. So that was fun. And I did just say Conrad. So Conrad, he is our resident GM and therapy expert. Conrad, how you doing today?
I'm doing swell.
And we have our very first special guest here on the Degecast, joining us from Kids on Bikes on the player panel. He is my character, Sean's older brother, Chad. Let's welcome Sam Gettleman to the show. Sam, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on, guys? Chad here.
Whoa, it's all right. All right. Go Bears.
Go Bears.
Go Bears. Now, we brought Sam on to kind of talk a little bit about his experience, what he liked about Kids on Bikes, playing Chad, playing the older brother. We talked a little bit last week about how Conrad was a little surprised almost that Sam, or Chad rather, was so protective over Sean and just wanted to see the best for his brother. Surprised in a way, it's like you don't. A lot of times you see a lot of siblings fight and whatnot, and that really wasn't the case between Sean and Chad, which was pretty cool. But Sam, do you want to take a few and just kind of talk about your experience on Kids on Bikes and what you kind of liked about the game?
Yeah, sure. So, I thoroughly dug Stranger Things, the television show, and when you kind of brought that whole concept up to me as a tabletop role-playing game that you can now play Stranger Things, I was like, let's do it. So, overall, the system was very simple to understand in terms of you take your dice and you place them appropriately on your characteristics and your traits, and whatever dice you decide, D20, D4, that's all you can roll. And I think that's, really simplified and allows you to just jump into the game, into the setting, and kind of let Conrad, take you through the world. And I was thoroughly engrossed, and definitely, I felt I was there. Being Chad was, super awesome. I got to play a kind of, jock character, which I don't, really experience in real life. So, just kind of, I'm that nerd in real life. So I was like, hey, let's do that. As for Chad, he was, kind of a dumb jock, but that doesn't mean that he didn't care for his, his little brother, Sean, and wanted, his best. And definitely see his best interest.
Definitely. It's like, there are plenty of times where it's like, Sean, get back to school, get back to class. I'm driving him back to school after sneaking out into the woods and all of that stuff. So it absolutely rings true.
And I definitely did feel bad because I feel like your character didn't get to play as much because I was always just like, go home, get out of here. Don't belong here, little bro. So
yeah. But hey, still it worked out.
Those evoked, like real emotions though, like the frustration of an authority figure holding you back from doing something, but it was also mixed because it was like familial authority. So then it's like, I still love this guy though. But
I guess I'll listen to him if I have to.
Yeah. That dynamic was just so great to watch. And it was like, it definitely is difficult at times when, you as a person want to do something that your character doesn't necessarily want to do, and vice versa. So that was great and well done. I thought too.
Oh, very well done. Very well done.
I was really surprised for a number of reasons. Like one, just like I just wasn't expecting that level of like fraternal commitment in general, I guess. But also like in a lot of my role playing experience, like a lot of players are like they help the team, but ultimately are rather, self-centered. But it felt like Chad's like whole deal was like really centered around like the overall like health of Sean, and especially the point where it's like, okay, Sean just like fled the school, and I like picture so many siblings just being like, ugh, and just kind of like groaning that's like something that they'll have to deal with later with their parents or something. But actually approaching the vice principal, like taking like a whop to the face like on his behalf, and like hotly pursuing him like outside of the school, and like all of those events, I was just like, it's just stuff you can't prepare for as a dungeon master or a game master, and the humanity of it was great, and that's like a really cool part of role playing in general. But I loved that, and I loved the dynamic between Sean and Chad. So I know we like touched a little bit last week, but I just loved the commitment by Sam to like go like full in on this character and stay true to like these core values that he set. So
yeah, so I mean, I know the game kind of introduces those tropes, right? That you got the jock, you got the nerd, you got the little, all that. But I figured I'd kind of try a little bit to kind of turn that trope on its head, instead of just being a dumb bully who only cares about, or not a dumb bully, but a dumb jock who only cares about himself and his own interests, to kind of be able to have three dimensions to his character, and not only care about the football team or sports or getting the girl or whatever. So, I'm sure that if we had continued, multiple sessions, I probably would have had more character and depth in terms of, why I cared so much about Sean and looked out for him. Maybe it had something to do with our parents, but being just the one day, you get that short little brief introduction and whatnot. So I mean it helps that outside of all this, me and Nate get along pretty well and at work, and we work well together anyways. So I think that definitely helped us kind of have that quote unquote brother relationship. So
yeah, no, I'd certainly agree with that. I mean, like, Sam and I actually, like, at work, I mean, we work incredibly close together, especially on certain projects and things like that. So I think kind of that aspect definitely kind of translated over into the brother relationship between Sean and Chad, which and it's cool because like in most of the games that we play, you don't have. I think there's only another game where we have a set of brothers or anybody that's related. I'm trying to think about it, but this is cool because we actually have, we had Chad and Sean, we had Nelson Sr., Nelson Jr. So there's like a lot of just cool family dynamics here that I certainly appreciated. I think really played well into this like, late 80s, early 90s,
ancient.
Yes, ancient by this point, old school town. It was really cool. Really cool aspect of what we were going for.
So I totally forgot that their names was actually Nelson.
Nelson Sr., Nelly is what Tony went by. So with that, I'm going to throw to Conrad for a little bit. Conrad wanted to touch on a few things. So Conrad, I'm going to give you the spotlight and go nuts.
So one thing that's new in this episode is the powered character. And that's also something that's rather unique to this game. And not just where, you have this low fantasy setting where nobody else has powers and then there's somebody who does, but the nature of group control over this NPC was super cool and again, like incredibly difficult to plan for. You have just like all of these options for different traits to assign in the book. But then beyond that, I mean, you just make up your own too. So I mean, sky's the limit with the different characteristics that you want to write down and then hand out to people. And so I also thought it would be fun to have the randomness of it when I handed out those traits that I had made. But
as a player, it was definitely interesting and really fun. Just kind of having, your character that you're playing as well as this character you're sharing with everyone else at the table.
Yeah,
Can't say I've played any other system that has done anything like that. So I thought that was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a super cool part of Kids on Bikes. And so like coming up with those traits, like one, I want them to feel like enough value where you're contributing something to this NPC when you control them. But also, it's truly a shared character, like I didn't want like some one person to be like, okay, I am assuming control of the guy who has super strength and can change his body density. But also, like they're kind of balancing that with what would be funny to have and the way that these things come up. So, one thing was, preserving the mystery of the story that's ongoing. So, of course, right there, I say, okay, if this person can just tell them, what's going on, that's not going to work. So that's how we come up with only communicates in grunts. So then with that, I also thought when I'm handing over control of this, I don't want the grunts to be like, oh, this person is able to completely communicate everything otherwise, but have some sort of degree of damage there almost, where the communication is, to the best of their ability, but still not great. So like Nate approaches and the character replicates what Nate did with the bunny because the powered character was spying on Nate.
And I have to admit, I have watched Kids on Bikes probably 1,000 times because it was the first game I edited, and I didn't know what I was doing, so I watched it over and over and over and over again while I was editing. And it wasn't until I don't know, about an hour ago, where I was rewatching this episode for this podcast, where I realized, that's why he knew the gesture. He was probably spying when I was playing with the bunny. It took me that long to figure it out.
That's great. Yeah, those checks that you were making at the edge of the woods when there's the rustling in the bushes and whatnot. That was because the powered character was there.
Trying to spot the invisible child spying on us.
Right. Yeah. So that was me introducing the powered character in a way that was haunting. So to keep the air of mystery about and whatnot, and also make it something, curious. So I saw, just how curious Sean is in pursuing Nelson Sr. with his research and whatnot. So
the papers.
Right. Yeah. So I thought this is a pretty good hook to create that curiosity where, he's going to approach. And it kind of did that, I kind of was able to plan out a little bit where, Nellie didn't go over and check it out. And I was like, Nellie's got a better handle on reality. I feel like.
He's the center of his own world, so he has to deal with that.
That design that was how he knew to make those gestures, and then things start spiraling out of control very quickly when I always hungry ends up in the craziest person's possession. So going to then eat the bunny subsequently. I don't know if anybody else at the table that came to mind. I mean, maybe Tony would have thought of that, but
I was at that point just pondering how I can kind of mess with the ones that I had. I wasn't thinking about the other people's powers and abilities.
Yeah, it definitely did not dawn on me at the time.
And when I was creating that, it did not dawn on me that always hungry would lead to eating things that don't make sense to eat.
You've got pica.
Then of course, right away, Dan has him trying to eat a live rabbit that is in the possession of another human being. Again, why, you know, planning things is difficult, and you can only do the best you can do. So, you know, I thought it would just be kind of like a fun way to keep the character occupied. So it's like, okay, if he's always hungry, you know, it's an easy reward system to, you know, get him to do things that you want him to do. But of course, you know, it turned into that.
I didn't even think about blackmail.
Right. So then when you're designing the powered character, it really is like a lot to take in if you're trying to have some semblance of control. Otherwise, you know, you just throw characteristics at it and see what happens. We had a more controlled setting, so I wanted to have a bit more predictability. But in general, I think when you're playing kids on bikes, it is kind of like here's your town, and you have your small mysteries, and then you just kind of go. You don't try to plan nearly as much. So having these random characteristics and seeing how they play out it's definitely, you know, fun to do and to witness.
I just thought the powered character was like a really cool aspect to a game that, like, I mean, like Tony said a little bit ago, like, he hasn't seen anything like that in another RPG game or RPG setting. You know, where you've got the entire game everybody playing the game, rather, playing this one character. You know, so it's cool because it definitely allows for, like, yeah, there were some like some points where, like, you know, I would want to do something, or Dan would want to do something, one of you guys wanted to do something, and then somebody else would be like, nope, can't do that, you know, or like we'd feed into it and it became something cooler or something better than the original thought. Any of the games that we've played, and obviously you guys will be watching them down the road, but any of the games that we've played for this show, where there was some collaborative aspects like that, I personally believe those are some of, like, the best aspects, the best things that actually came out of some of the stuff we've done. So there was such a cool aspect to the game. I really, really enjoyed it.
So I agree that the collaborative aspect of tabletop role playing in general is like one of its greatest strengths. I mean, the collective storytelling is just such a great experience to be a part of, as well as to, you know, just build better relationships and have fun. I'm really curious, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. So this is where the first 2 episodes are really world building. You're kind of just going about your day, and, you know, we meet the characters, and we meet characters they interact with at school, and now we're introducing for the first time, like, the mysterious powered character, as well as these strange oozes in the woods. And I'm really curious what all 3 of you, like, what was, like, going through your minds as these things were being revealed.
So my initial thought was somebody was dumping, like, illegal wastes in the woods, and that was just like a pile of sulfuric acid that somebody had just kind of disposed of in the woods. And the reason why this quote unquote zombie deers were appearing, because the deers didn't know any better, tried to drink the sulfuric acid, and their faces melted away, which would very much look like a zombie. So in both the player, and I think, like, the Nelson Jr.'s mindset, it's like, there's nothing supernatural happening right now. There's this is explainable. It's fine. Everything is fine.
So then with the powered character too, though, but, like, turning invisible, like, how did that influence, like, your thought about the supernatural elements?
Yeah, obviously, I think at that point too, I think Nelson was kind of freaking out. I think Nate had to censor me a couple of times in those scenes right after, and when the powered kid came back, because at that point it's like Nelson Jr. couldn't explain what was going on, and I think that's what kind of was starting to terrify him. So whenever he kind of saw the powered character after that, he was always very afraid of him. It's just like he can't explain what's going on, so that's the terrifying part for him.
Good.
Sam, what about you? What was going through your head when some of these more kind of supernatural things were starting to get revealed?
It's been a couple months since we.
I know.
So I'm really trying to kind of remember. I know probably a lot of it was focused on keeping Sean safe. I certainly didn't trust the powered character when they first showed up. Especially just, I think at one point, I think I did see him. I can't remember. Him become. I don't remember if I saw him become invisible or become super heavy. But I do remember him freaking out because that's right. He didn't like tight spaces, so he wasn't getting in the car. So yeah, it just definitely kind of freaked me out, especially with like the ooze. Although I'm a dumb jock, so I don't know what this ooze is or what it's really doing. All I know is that it melted stuff, so we should probably not touch it. Fire bad, don't touch kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, definitely the whole, the survival aspect of keeping Sean alive or not alive, but just, in safe, as it were.
No, and I mean, for me, like, I kind of knew some of it was coming because Conrad did talk to me a little bit about the game beforehand. It's the only game that I actually knew a little bit about before going into. When we first started talking about, like iron and argon and all that back in school, like I knew, I had a feeling something was going to play an aspect. It was going to be something, but I wasn't entirely sure, like 100% what. I knew because Conrad and I talked about before playing, I knew there were going to be like some sort of a zombie deer or something like that, but he didn't really elaborate into like how, or at least if he did, I don't remember off the top of my head. So I remember like kind of going in and, wondering what this ooze was, what all this stuff was. I kind of had a similar thought to Tony. Instead of it being like if somebody was dumping the waste, I immediately went to the pickle factory. Like I immediately thought it had something to do with the pickle factory. And I think I put so much emphasis on it because all of the rumors that we made were surrounding the pickle factory in the beginning of episode 1. So I had a feeling it had something to do with pickle factory. You guys will certainly find out as the episodes roll on what it has to do with. But it was like I had all of these thoughts. Mostly it had to do with the pickle factory. Or like I also had I remember thinking like it was just something like an underground well or something like left behind by another company or something. I'm not sure. I didn't think it was necessarily supernatural. I thought it was mostly a man-made phenomenon.
All right. Very cool. Yeah, I'm always curious what people are thinking as I reveal plot clues, and it's interesting the different thoughts. Like some are like just straight up on point. Just in general, like anytime you're a DM or whatnot, and you have like these different plot clues, and sometimes people they predict it like 3 steps ahead, and like wow, that first clue was amazing, I guess. And other times you have to like beat people over the head with clues. And they're still like, wait, but what's happening? And it's like
you've never had to do that with me. Point, never.
So then you're like, okay, now this professor who is an expert in the clues is going to come and just explain one by one every clue that you've received. It's like, do they sink in yet? So it is always interesting to see like what people are thinking as you go. So
anything else anybody wants to kind of throw in before we wrap up?
State champs, baby! Woo!
State champs, baby! So this is another episode of the Degecast. Thank you to Sam for coming out today and just sitting with us, talking a little bit about the game. Certainly appreciate it. So thank you, Sam.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Next week we'll actually have Nelson Sr. coming to the Degecast, talk about his role. Dan Cameron will be here, so we'll talk with him then about that. Until then, if you want to, like I said earlier in the show, if you do want to email us any questions or anything like that, you certainly can. degetime@gmail.com. Give us a call 617-506-9686. Leave us a question, comment what you like, what you didn't like, what you might want to see going forward. But Conrad, say goodnight. Oh, we got the Terminator Conrad saying goodnight there. That was great. That was great. Tony, can you also make Terminator noises?
No, I can't.
Okay, so are you just going to give like a regular goodbye?
Yeah, just bye.
Okay, so he's just saying goodbye. I'm going to say goodbye, and we will see you guys next week. Have a good one.